Right. That's why I was
welcome to Poetry Bridge, December style. Well, this is one of those kind of weird weeks, you know, in between Christmas and New Year's, at least for me, and I just don't know, what am I going to do? Christmas is over, and I'm waiting for New Year's. So it just turned out this was a perfect night for me. Glad you came out. Glad you came out. It's wonderful. Yes?
Good for us.
Good for you too. Good for you too. All right, good. So just want a warning, to some degree, particularly those of you who are up here, and maybe you're on candid camera, so to speak, in the sense that we're broadcasting this live. This is the second month that we've tried this. We had 7 people as far away as Indianapolis and Mexico who are regulars here who were out of town and were able to check in, and some people in Seattle that couldn't make it. So we've got cameras over there, there's another camera up there, and it's through this thing called livestream.com. It's free, and it's like your own broadcasting channel. Plus it's recorded, so that if later you want to go back and if you're one of the poets and see yourself, you know, or show it to your friends, or they could check in later, it's also on the same thing. So it's kind of cool, just to let you know, heads up. I just want to start out by thanking you for coming tonight, and also just start out by thanking Pete and Cameron, who have C&P Coffee here. Pete's in the back there, making your favorite drink. Although both of them, you know, really support this effort, Pete has just been a sweetheart when it comes to just figuring out any way that he can to support our effort here. So very pleased. So we've been doing this since February of 2010. So the way it works is we're going to have 2 featured readers. One of them is Thaddeus Gunn, who will kick things off, and then myself. I put myself in here primarily because I couldn't get anybody who wanted to be a featured on this particular date, and I tried. But we have a full schedule of folks all the way through May, which is just feels really good. It used to be like we were always scrambling. So we have a full schedule of featured readers, but open mic is really one of the really fun things. We've had great open mics here. We've already had 6 people sign up, so feel free to do so at any time. So let me introduce Thaddeus Gunn, and we'll get started. This is what Thaddeus said. I always ask, what do you want people to know about yourself? And this is what he said. He said he's a creative consultant by trade, has worked on campaigns for everyone from Microsoft and T-Mobile to Nickelodeon and Disney. He was the recipient of a Seattle Award in 2005 for his work with AOL. His screenplay, let me see if I can get it, his Hieronymus Deadband was optioned by Imagi Entertainment in 2009. He studied creative writing at the University of Southern California with a Penn Faulkner winner, T.C. Boyle. Last summer, he was admitted to the Tin House Summer Writers Workshop, where he had the good fortune to work with Story Prize winners and National Book Award nominee Jim Shepard. I just have enjoyed Thaddeus enormously last Thanksgiving, a year ago. Just totally charmed me and everybody in the room with a story. I don't know what he has in mind tonight, but I know it'll be a treat. Please welcome Thaddeus.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, people over the internet, I normally do fiction. Most of you, there are a few people here who are already familiar with my fiction. I've heard it described as really sick shit where people die and things like that. Tonight I'm going to do memoir for the first time, 2 short memoir pieces that I wrote in the last 2 days. And these are entirely true, and so you will see these little chunks of my life and you'll go, oh, I see why his fiction is so sick. If you have any questions as to their veracity, my wife and common law attorney, Teresa, is in the back of the room. The first one is a ghost story called Self-Serve. It's always best to see a ghost in the company of someone else, better still to see a ghost with someone you love. The loving bond leaves less chance for rebuke later. A less committed party might grow sheepish and go back on their story to avoid embarrassment when company is around, but not your fiancé. Sharing a sunset on the North Shore with your fiance is romantic. Seeing a ghost with her becomes an indelible part of your combined mythology. And it's the one thing the two of you won't argue about after the vows have been said and you're both comfortable enough to fight about the phone bill without the world and the relationship coming to an end. Bills are a matter for contention. The ghost you both meet in the snowbound Oregon woods is a concrete and unimpeachable fact. In 1994, my wife Teresa was still my long-distance future girlfriend, just a phantom voice on a wire, really, somebody who lived in Hawaii. We met on the phone by accident. Teresa was the roommate of a friend of mine who lived in Honolulu. I called one day, and Teresa answered. Our first conversation lasted 5 hours. It's true. The long-distance courtship that followed stretched over a year and cost thousands in long-distance charges. About 6 months into the conversation, I told her I loved her. I could hear her eyes rolling. She pointed out that I had no idea what she looked like, which was true. We hadn't exchanged photos or even talked about each other's physical attributes, although I did call her late one night after a protracted bout of drinking and inquired as to what she was wearing and begged her to take it off. I said, no matter, she's the girl for me, even if she weighed 600 pounds and had 6 heads. I didn't care. I was smitten. She said, that's nice. You should tell that to your girlfriend. To my credit, I did exactly that. I told my girlfriend there was this girl in Hawaii named Teresa that I'd been talking to on the phone, and if she ever showed up in Washington, our relationship would be in trouble. So this frank disclosure may have factored into her decision to go camping with some guy named Bob. I called Teresa and told her that the girlfriend and I were done, and she said, oh darn, so sorry to hear. But nothing to indicate that she would like to escalate our relationship. Now that was in June, and then in August I called her and told her truthfully that I was coming out to Hawaii on business and I'd love to finally meet her in person. She said, great, I'll meet you at the plane. I hung up and realized that we still hadn't exchanged pictures. That neither of us knew what the other looked like. So that would certainly make the pickup difficult, so I dialed her back and said, I tell you what, I'll overnight some photos. And she said, great, I'll do the same. She sent me pictures all right. One was a picture of her in goggles and a rubber cap, a blur coming out of the ocean. The rest were obfuscations as well. A Halloween snapshot of her in full face makeup. A photo of her on what was ostensibly girls' mud mask facial night. And a photo of her back. In return, I sent her pictures of my shoes. It worked. I was the third guy off the plane and she recognized my Doc Martens. We spent 5 days together. She introduced me to Hawaii. We swam in the ocean, kissed under the Southern Cross, and made love like sex had just been invented. Sorry. It's true. While I was in Hawaii for those 5 days, I must have done a great sales job on Seattle being a land flowing with milk and money. Although she was living in paradise, she was woefully underemployed. I guess heaven's unemployed want money worse than hell's thirsty want ice water. So she left paradise and came to Seattle the following September and started a career of slowly freezing to death in our 400 square foot studio apartment, which was also conveniently located next to the freeway. After a couple of months watching Teresa shiver, I decided that we should get out of our cubbyhole and take my 7-year-old son, Aaron, down to Reno to visit my folks for Christmas. Even if it wasn't warmer down there, it was certain to be drier. I got a tip from my dad that the best way to get to Reno from Seattle was a back way. Turn off I-5 at Eugene, then go south past Klamath Lake and eventually through Susanville, California, and on to Reno. It was the best way to avoid traffic, although the highway past Susanville was rife with staters. I'd done that drive before. I couldn't quite remember whether I paid that ticket or not. We could leave at 6 in the evening and drive overnight. That put us there about 6 a.m. The folks assured us they'd still be up to welcome us whatever time we arrived. By the time we passed Portland, it had started snowing. I was starting to question the wisdom of getting off I-5 and taking a back way in the snow, especially one that led us through a town where I most likely had a bench warrant waiting. We stayed the southern course, and when we got to Medford, somewhere near 2 a.m., we were getting low on gas. We got off the highway and went in search of petrol. There were no gas stations in Medford open at 2 a.m. Since we were already pointing east, I figured we might just take the old man's advice and cut across to Klamath Falls, then resume the suggested route towards Susanville. I'd take my chances with the warrant. Why I thought Klamath Falls might have gas when Medford didn't is a mystery now, lost to the ravages of age on cerebral cortex. The best that I can guess is that I suffered from late-onset juvenile impetuousness and comorbid desultory focus. It almost got us killed. Klamath Falls didn't have any gas either. By then it was 3 a.m. and the snow was falling fast and thick. We came across a hotel, went to the door, and pounded away but got no answer. We thought about sitting in the parking lot until dawn broke or some sign of life appeared, but even doing that might have frozen us. We reasoned that we should press on, perhaps even head back whence we came. Surely we could make it back to I-5 on the gas we had left. Perhaps then if we ran out of gas, we'd get found by a stater or someone. In any case, we should keep the car running so that Aaron, who was sleeping soundly in the back seat, could stay warm. We headed back west. Klamath Lake was a snow-covered expanse that offered a faint blue glow from an unseen source. I grew up in a cold climate, and I've always wondered how snow seemed to create its own light. I remember the orange light of snowy nights in Michigan, but that was because we were in the middle of Detroit, and it was easy to point to distant streetlights as the source. Where we were now, near the shore of Klamath Lake, there was no orange city light, nor any other sign of civilization that we could discern. Only that persistent, faint blue glow. We drove, the out-of-gas light came on. I turned off the main road at a covered bridge. It was as good a move as any, and still kept us headed in a westerly direction. We kept driving and prayed hard. The woods deepened around us, and the blue glow faded. There were no atheists in the car that night. And then in the midst of the trees, an orange light, that delightful harbinger of civilization. As we pulled uphill, moving deeper into the forest, the light became bright enough to indicate a definite location on our left. And lo, what to our wondering eyes should appear but a gas station, neatly located at a T where another forest road butted up against our own. We turned left and pulled up to the pumps. I got out of my car and fairly seized the pump nozzle and then checked myself. I remembered I was in Oregon. That pumping your own gas was against the law. I stood there waiting for the attendant and took a look around. Now this wasn't your usual gas station. It was old, a far cry from the squeaky clean swipe your card and pump your own outfits that populated I-5. The structure itself was clapboard, obviously built from wood. As best I could tell, it was painted green, but far too dark of a shade to be Sinclair green, and not the signature color of any other brand of gas I'd ever known. The shop had old-school garage doors on 3 bays, the kind you'd squat down and grab the handle and lift by hand. The adjoining store had triangular stacks of cylindrical oil cans in the display windows. Since no pump jockey was forthcoming, I decided to take a look around and see if I couldn't scare somebody up. So I walked up and went inside the store. The first thing that struck me funny was that it had a plank floor, the kind you might see in a log cabin or a Wild West reproduction village, but never in a gas station. I gave it a pass, though, because this place was in the Tules, so all bets were off. I mean, hill folk, even the Oregon breed, were known for doing things on their own way, and to hell with the rest of us. I mean, heck, maybe even those unbranded pumps dispense moonshine. I was certain from seeing the inside of the store that this place didn't do much business in any case. The shelves were mostly bare. I couldn't even locate a cash register. It seemed to be a facade, like a movie set. I startled when I saw the pump jockey. He must have come out of some back room somehow, even though I couldn't locate the door. He passed me brusquely and went straight out the front door into the car. I didn't get a very good look at him, other than to note that he was a bit shaggy and was wearing gray coveralls and a wool cap. I followed him out. I told him I needed 20 bucks worth, even though he didn't ask, and was already filling the tank. He had the air of a man who had been rudely interrupted and was loath to speak to the offender. I kept my trap shut. I listened to the tank fill and the snow fall, and I was happy. I gave him a 20. He took it and stomped off from whence he came. I got back in the car and kissed my girl with all the ardor of a condemned man reprieved. I started the car and watched the needle climb to nearly full. We pulled away from the pumps and we turned right to exit. We hadn't driven 40 feet when I realized that we should have turned left, that the T intersection was behind us. I pulled a little further down the road and found a wide spot where we did a U-turn and got ourselves turned around right. I headed back toward the intersection. I couldn't see the lights of the gas station anymore. I assumed the pump jockey had turned them off to avoid further interruption. I assumed that the pump jockey had a terse manner because he inadvertently left the lights on for half the night and was embarrassed by unexpected customers. Maybe the guy was in the back playing Nintendo and doing bong rips. Simply forgot to turn the lights off and was thereby obligated due to some arcane Oregon law to fill the tank of any and all who presumed the place to be open. I rolled up to the stop sign at the T and looked to my left. There was no gas station. There wasn't even an open space where a gas station might have been. There was only a thick stand of pines, their boughs burdened with new fallen snow. Therese and I gaped at each other, looked out both windows, gaped again. The gas gauge still read nearly full. I looked ahead. Ours were the only tire tracks in the new snow. Sure enough, the tracks turned from the main road left onto the tributary. We were obviously back to the spot where we first saw the orange light and turned into the gas station. But now, there was nothing but the trees and the car and my headlights. Out the back window, I could still see the inexplicable faint blue glow of snowfall. That is a true story. And now, thanks to Google Maps, I looked from where we were on satellite, and there's no T intersection, there's no gas station, there's no nothing out there. So there you go. Okay, this is another memoir piece. This is about drugs. Drugs. It's called Prank Call. It's Wednesday night, and on Wednesday night, me and Joe are always hanging around the trailer high on blow. It's how we start every weekend, 3 days early and high as hell. So that's not new, but what is new is on this Wednesday night, the last Wednesday before Christmas, is that we hatched a plan. We hatched it. Well, I didn't so much hatch it as sit back and watch it hatch. It was Joe's plan. Credit where credit's due, So the plan was, he says to me, the plan is that, there's this guy who got a stereo sitting under his Christmas tree, still in the box, and Joe was going to steal it. Did I already say that Joe was a criminal? Oh, well, anyway, Joe's a criminal, I'm his roommate, but he's not a full-time criminal. He just likes doing crimes. I mean, we both have full-time jobs, and it's 1984, and I'm like 22 years old, and, okay, we're all caught up, good. So, we're doing blow off the backs of his cheap-ass dinner plates because he didn't want to scratch up his, his beer mirrors, like his Budweiser mirror, or the Miller mirror, because that one was really nice. And he looks up at me and he says, he hatched a plan. Okay, there was this kid named Driver. And Driver wasn't his real name, but that's what he did. He loved Joe's car like crazy. And I never knew why. It was in good condition. It was a 60s Fairlane or something, and it was always clean and shiny because Driver was always washing and polishing and practically dry humping the thing. But, we'd have him drive us around when we were all loaded and didn't feel like getting a DUI. It's like we had our own chauffeur. We'd sit in the back seat and he'd drive us wherever and drop us off and just wait for us in the car. Which had to be just fucking awful because it's like winter and 30 some odd below and he had to be freezing his ass off, but it's his choice. Oh, and the other thing, Driver was straight up homely, like Howdy Doody's redneck cousin. And it was crazy. We always had these girls around that he'd bring by the trailer, or mobile home if you want to be specific, and they were really cute and they were always up in a bedroom with his homely ass, but every once in a while when they got tired of him, they'd come out and flirt us up, Kind of a sweet deal. Driver, the 17-year-old pimp chauffeur. I I digress. We cannot get stuck here. We must move along because, as before I said, Joe hatched a plan, and you got to know how this turns out. So awesome. So we're doing all this blow, and he looks at me and he says, "Driver." And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "I'll get Driver to go get that stereo and bring it back here. I'll pay him to steal it." Okay, wait, one more thing. I had an aunt who was a cop. A cop in the police department. The kind of cop with a gun and a badge and stuff. But just place that in your nugget for later. I will call her Auntie Popo. Okay, now moving on. So, Joe's all, "I'll have Driver steal it and I'll just pay him like a couple $100. And I'm like, "Okay, man, that's all you." So Joe gets on the blower and goes, "Driver, get your supple butt over here. I have a job for you." Joe said that talking to Driver that way made Driver feel loved and wanted. Crazy thing is, Joe could have bought his own damn stereo if he, and by he, I mean he and I, meaning we, did not spend so much money on drugs. It's just that buying all that blow made a person low on cash, and that made it necessary to steal. I mean, Jesus. Me alone, I spent, I think, $14,000 a year on blow. I remember that because it was the purchase price of a brand new BMW 318i at the time. But, you know, you wouldn't steal groceries and stuff. I mean, because it's 1984 and ramen's a dime and Kraft mac and cheese is a quarter. And what else do you need besides maybe a half rack of Schmidt to make it through the week? But, you know, when it comes to luxuries, like the guy's stereo that was about to get stolen, it's not something he really needs. And if he doesn't really need it, you can take it, right? Not like you're taking his dialysis machine or something. And besides, a dialysis machine is way too hard to fence. Just ask Joe. So, Driver comes over and Joe gives him the money and Driver takes off, and then there's nothing to do except more blow and silently freak out until he gets back with the stereo. So that's what we do, except when you're all high on coke, it's hard to keep quiet. So I start reading the newspaper out loud and singing along with MTV and asking Joe what happened to that girl. And he said, "What girl?" And I said, "The girl he had over while I was over house sitting at Annie Popo's last night." Boom, there it is. He says, "She wanted me to tie her up and stick a gun in her mouth." And I was like, "Shit, really? Did you?" It was like, "Are you kidding? No, I'm not crazy. I have standards." I told her to get lost, but she still wouldn't go away. And so what did you do? I waited until she went to bed and fell asleep, and I peed on her. She freaked out and went running out into the snow, and I haven't seen her since. "You peed on her in your own bed?" "No, I peed on her in your bed." And then, just before I can call him a stinky fucking fuck for peeing on some fucking girl in my fucking bed, the door busts open, and here comes Driver going, "Hey, come out to the car and help me get the stereo into the house." So it's like Christmas, right? Partly because it is Christmas, and partly because we're all excited about this awesome new stereo that Joe just got from Santa Driver, the thief, pimp, chauffeur. And we're all checking it out, and oohing and eyeing and getting it set up. And we get it set up and throw some Duran Duran on the turntable, and shit, only one speaker works. So we look at the other speaker and the wire's hooked up and everything looks okay. So then in a bit of Joe just picks the speaker cabinet up and shakes it. And then there's this thump thump sound inside. And he goes, "Oh man, the woofer's loose." So we open up the back of the speaker and dude, I am not lying. 2 bricks of coke fall out. I was like, "Shoot!" And Joe was like, "Shoot!" And we were like, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." So what do? We hatched a second plan. I was like, "Pack this shit up, bricks and all, take it back to the guy's place. This could get us killed. I am smart about these things because I have half of a college education, whereas you, Joe, have none." And Joe was all, "No, why don't we take one of the bricks and send the other one back with the stereo? That way, he might think he just lost it." Or maybe his roommate took it, or something. And I'm all, great, let's do that, because cocaine addiction trumps half a college education anyway. So we put the stereo back in the trunk, and driver takes off, and we go back in the trailer to spend some more time doing blow and silently freaking out. Speaking of which, the coke in those bricks, you better believe we broke open that shit and did some of that. And I just have this to say about that. Oh my God! And then the phone rang, and Joe was all, what? You did what? And then he hung up the phone, and I was all, what? He did what? He took the stereo to the police station. Driver took the stereo to the police station and just dropped it off right there on the stoop. He said dude was home, or so he thought. When he went back, so he freaked out silently and just rolled up to the police station and dropped the shit off. Joe said, we gotta leave now. And I said, okay, where are we gonna go? And by that time, we were in my car driving around just freaking out, not doing much else, just driving, freaking out, driving, freaking out. And then I hatched another plan. So that's 3 plans hatched for those of you playing along at home. I say, hey, I have the key to Auntie Popo's, and we can go over there and hide out. I had been house sitting, remember? So we go over to Auntie Popo's, and we can continue to do what you do when you're high on coke, which is talk a lot and feel really self-important and loving and brilliant, and oh, I forgot about the tequila. We found Auntie Popo's bottle of Jose Cuervo and started doing shots. I mean, look, it totally made sense. Coke makes you too nervous? Do a shot. Tequila makes you a little sleepy? Snort a rail. You can do that forever. Or, you know, at least until you pass out. Which is exactly what Joe did next. He went tits up on the couch, kind of like my dog used to do when it had a seizure. So it was kind of nice and Christmassy, just me and Auntie Popo's house, and the Christmas tree lights on, the snow falling quietly outside, and Joe snoring quietly in the background, and me singing Christmas carols at the top of my lungs to keep myself company, not to keep myself company so much, but to keep myself from getting scared. Because when you're all high on coke and by yourself or with your passed out friend, it can get really scary. You start having the craziest thoughts that are really convincing, like the thought that there might be little men in wetsuits under the house with house jacks, and that they're going to jack it up and steal it. So then you might do what any sane person might do if somebody was trying to steal their house. You call the police.
Oh my God.
But check it out, I did it the right way. So as to not arouse too much suspicion, I called the non-emergency number. And I said to the cop on duty, really calm-like, look, I know this sounds crazy, which is actually what I said. I know this sounds crazy. But there are men in wetsuits under my house right now, and they have house jacks, and they have hatched a plan to jack up my house and steal it. And there was a long silence on the other end of the phone. And then the guy said, sir, have you been taking any drugs this evening? And that shit just freaked me out right there. I slammed down the phone, went over to Joe, grabbed him, and started going, Joe, you gotta wake up. The cops are coming. And he woke up and freaked out. We both freaked out. We went out of my car and drove and drove and drove. And then we were way out in the mountains. All our coke wore off, and we passed out. And when we woke up, it was daylight, and we were both late for work. Joe looked at me and said, why are we here? And I didn't have an answer for him. I honestly did not know. It's been almost 30 years since I last saw Joe. I have no idea what happened to him. It's probably something bad. I do know the driver enlisted in the Army immediately after the stereo incident and wound up driving tanks high on acid. We got him all drunk and duct-taped him to a chair and shaved his head the day before he went to boot camp. After my Auntie Popo got back from wherever she was, she called me and said, hey, Did you make a crank call to the precinct from my house while I was gone? And I was way too eager to tell her, yes, that's what it was, crank call. And she was totally right in calling me a jackass and letting me know that I owed her a bottle of tequila. But she did say Merry Christmas anyway. Thank you.
I'm always amazed